Hey guys, so you ready for it? Today's September 23rd, 2024, 6:54 a.m. Central Time. Said I was going to do this video a couple weeks ago to a few people. Sorry I haven't, just getting around to it. Apologize. If you guys ever have any content requests, you can always email me. It's below. You can email me about a bunch of shit. I don't really care. But a lot of people do email me, so beware, I may not get to it right away, but I will get to it, and I will do the video. Middle East wars, based on experience. This is a video they wanted. So based on my military experience, because I've said dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the last 12 years that I've been doing this channel and other media platforms that while I served in the Marines and intelligence, my primary quote-unquote target was Iran. And I've spoken about Iran in great depth and detail, which those videos are gone now. But had they still exist, they probably get more traction these days, obviously. So, beside the point. Also, I have not been watching the news. So, this really is going to be based on opinion, too. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt, obviously. But, here's the deal. Before I go in, the only thing I know from the news are two things. One, the pagers and radios exploding in Lebanon because Israel's hacking them, which I'll go into in a second. And two, that Israel's ramping up their strikes on Lebanon against Hezbollah, and Hezbollah because Hezbollah has been doing the same to them. That is not news. The escalation is news. They've been, exchanging fire back and forth for months since this Hamas bullshit occurred in October. So that's not news. Before I go into more important stuff, there's somebody that asked a question that I cannot respond to. It says there's a reply, and the reply is me, but it's not showing up. Blue Lightning 23 said, quote, "Just curious, are you suggesting that someone other than Israelis unalived the ones that blew up?" End quote. What I am suggesting, okay, regarding these pagers and these radios exploding in Lebanon, simultaneously apparently too, that are supposedly being hacked by Israel. What I am suggesting is that it is illogical to think that is the way it's going down. Here's the deal. Pagers. First off, this whole area is mixed with third world countries and non-third world countries, like Saudi Arabia versus Afghanistan or Iraq, and Egypt and Jordan. I just listed a few that are third and some aren't. These groups, it's not like they're going down to the Apple store and picking up an iPhone and they have the most brand new, latest technology. That's going to be the same with pagers and radios. These things can be hacked 100% for listening purposes, for chatter, getting that type of stuff, even for perhaps like communication like text would be. But for hacking to put some sort of malware in a device that does not have an explosive in it other than the battery, or is not a detonating device, okay, and have it cause the damage that the Lebanese are claiming is happening is illogical and hard to believe. There's one thing everybody needs to understand. Any news that comes out of the Middle East needs to be taken with a grain of salt, even if you see the fucking video. Most of the videos you'll see coming out of the Middle East, even far back as prior to the Afghan-Iraq war, are aftermath type situations, whether they be pictures or videos. Now they're videos. You don't necessarily know what caused whatever you're seeing, okay? And Hezbollah runs Lebanon these days, it sounds as though. They were on the brink of doing it when I was serving, but they're definitely doing it now like they are in Venezuela. And they may even be part of the government. So whatever the Lebanese are saying is whatever Hezbollah is saying too, and saying they're going to release. So the casualty numbers may be significantly different as well. But here's the deal. My dad had a pager, and he's been gone over a decade. He worked for a microchip company. So he had all the latest and greatest little gadgets. This pager had text. He could do voice texts to your cell phone. So like he'd call me, and it would actually be something he typed out, and it'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be home late. I'll be home at 5 or something like that. And it would be a robot talking to me on my cell phone from his pager. So it had those types of capabilities. It had, like, he could download documents and stuff to it, but I don't think it had internet access at that time. So let's say, for example, these pagers, obviously pagers these days have evolved. Let's say this third world country and this terrorist group have nifty pagers, okay? It's not going to be any niftier than a fucking Android or iPhone. And the radios themselves are just radios, unless there's something spiffy about those motherfuckers I'm unaware of. The only thing you could do to those things is if someone hacked my Android right now and put some sort of malware in it that caused the battery to heat up and I couldn't turn it off, and I felt it heating up, I still couldn't turn it off, it could explode my phone. Now, who would be hurt by that? Me? Perhaps my house might burn down, and anyone who's near me it will harm, but it sure as fuck isn't going to do anything to my neighbors next door unless my house catches on fire and it jumps to their house, which would be quite a distance. So the radius of these claimed explosions by these claimed pagers and hackable radios that are being hacked by Israel doesn't logically make any sense. Now, I haven't done in-depth dive into that story. So if there's something that I'm missing that would make logical sense, then I would have to reevaluate. But logically off the top, I'm going to say, no. I rebuff what the fuck they're saying, okay? I really do. And I don't think Israel's taking credit for it, and not saying they will or would. But if I missed that part of the story and Israel's like, hell yeah, we're hacking their shit and blowing it up left and right, I'd love to hear that story too. So anyway, moving past the pager and radio explosions. Here's the deal. The escalation with Hezbollah and Lebanon was foreseen. It was expected. I did not see it any other way. When I was serving, we did assessments on certain scenarios where Iran was part of that could cause potential conflict, mainly while we were in the Middle East, like to try and do, we were doing models of things, let's put it that way, of how things could go down and who would get involved and blah, blah, blah. And they weren't, some were extensive models that actually came true and some were not. But my primary focus, as I've said forever, was Iran's tentacles around the world with these terrorist groups, where they fund them, they arm them, they do drug trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, you name it. Iran is involved in a nefarious situation, okay? All around the world, not just in the Middle East, by any means. They're involved in South America, they're involved in Africa, the Middle East, and a few other places. It's just ugly. They have their tentacles in a lot of places. Their influence, however, on those groups are based upon how much, not necessarily they provide, but how broke that group is. Okay? So it's not like, well, we're going to give you a shitload of weapons. Please do this for us. That wouldn't fly with Hezbollah right now, because Hezbollah has a massive amount of weaponry, which this is why this situation is so scary for Israel as far as I'm concerned. Because if Hezbollah really wanted to, really truly wanted to, they could overwhelm the Iron Dome like that and destroy it. It would be detrimental to Israel 100%. With the amount of power that Hezbollah has sitting in Lebanon right now. So Iran saying, hey, we're going to give you even $100,000. We're going to give you $1 billion. Do this for us. Isn't necessarily going to make Hezbollah and Lebanon do anything on behalf of Iran. They have to pick and choose what that group is broke and wanting. For example, there are Hezbollah fractions everywhere. Venezuela in particular, that I focused on for a while, they're actually part of the Venezuelan government now, and that is evident. And they're probably in this country too now, so get ready for it, due to our border. But they're, like I said, Hezbollah is in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, and probably some of these little other areas. They may even be in Qatar, but they're not all one group. They're just factions, right? So each faction is going to have a different want or need, just like a population would. Okay, you'll have a starving population, or you'll have a population that's well fed, but they can't turn lights on, or they can't get to work or whatever. So energy is then your next source for that population. They have to pick and choose the need of the group. Iran does, so they're very strategic with who they give and what and why. None of these groups, none of them rely 100% on Iran for anything. They can't, because Iran has actually turned on some of these groups that were in Iraq by funding their opposition, if you will. Like, for example, ISIS didn't exist per se when I served. We were seeing activity happening in Afghanistan of a group of a very young generation that was very radicalized, that the leaders that were radicalizing that particular group were outcasts of Al-Qaeda. They did not, so that group of people that were young and radicalized by these outcasts of Al-Qaeda didn't have a group, but we were watching them. When I left, okay, and stopped serving, that group eventually became ISIS. And as we all know, there's different little factions of ISIS. Well, Iran did something similar. Like, ISIS doesn't get along with anybody, period. They don't get along with any group, period, on the planet. In fact, other terrorist groups apparently despise them. So, but they will work with them for a common goal, but they do not associate themselves with them. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Iran was funding a group that actually was against a Hezbollah faction in Iraq and stopped funding them. And I shouldn't even say funding. They were giving them weapons. They were moving weapons back and forth between Iran and Iraq and Syria to this particular Hezbollah group. Now, there was there was a leader from a terrorist group that's actually in Africa that showed up in Iraq and was meeting with Al-Qaeda members. This is way too much information, huh? And that apparently got on Iran's radar like it did ours. And when that happened, Iran decided to kind of coerce this leader into Iran's little minion group. And in order to do that, they agreed to stop funding this small faction of Hezbollah. When that happened, the two groups went at each other in Iraq. And we actually got stuck in the center of it, meaning like literally by territory. We didn't get involved, but territory-wise, and we had to move troops out to get away from the fighting. So Iran, it's not like Iran, they play what's going to be in their interest at that moment. So then you can turn around. That leader, by the way, got killed by a Hezbollah people. Oh, that was priceless. I heard that news and I just laughed and laughed. It was like, whoa, was it worth it? So then Iran had to get back in the good graces of that particular group and blah, blah, blah. And it took a couple years for that to happen, but it did happen. So Iran's, burned bridges too with groups. So it's a very complicated situation in the Middle East. And since we pulled out of Afghanistan, that really hampered down on our ability for not only intelligence, for control and command, for shipments of ammunition, weaponry, everything, and having a base in that area that we could fly in and out of in secure airspace too. By losing Bagram, that was the biggest mistake ever, was leaving Afghanistan. But beside the point, now that we don't have that, we are still in the Middle East, though. We're obviously in the Red Sea, we're in the Mediterranean Sea, and on the seas. But we're also in Iraq, and Iraq's government does not want us there. Period. They do not want us there. We refuse to pull out of Iraq. We have people in Syria. We have people in Yemen. We have people in Jordan. We have people in Saudi Arabia. We even have people in Turkey. We have people in Egypt. So all the surrounding areas of this whole detrimental area, we are in. We are literally deployed in these areas. We're apparently trying to stay out of this conflict. There will come a day that this conflict escalates to the point where Israel's getting hit detrimentally, that will, depending on who is in office, will really obviously make the difference, will turn the tide of the Middle East, and Israel will be destroyed. And we will allow it to have been destroyed. Or Israel will hang on long enough for us and our allies, like the UK and stuff, to help them, but they will still be detrimentally hurt in the meantime. But if we have a good leader in the White House and we show strength, okay, and we stand with Israel, the Middle East will not burn. If Israel gets struck to the detrimental possibilities that it can, because Hezbollah can absolutely overwhelm the Iron Dome today if they wanted to, and just obliterate lots of Israel. If that happens, the Middle East will be on fire, and we will be in a new war. The question is, in this model, is where will we be fighting that war? How will we be fighting that war? What branches? What bases will be used? All kinds of shit just flies out. If we do not have a strong leader in the White House to prevent Israel from being struck to the damaging degree they can, and it will be too late if that happens, the Middle East will be on fire. It will be a disaster. Troops will be getting deployed. Hundreds of thousands of troops will be getting deployed. Where, I don't know. This model is so powder keg that it's frightening for us, meaning our military. So if you're serving right now or have a family member serving right now, just, if you're a prayer person, pray. If you're whatever you do, just think of that person serving. Okay? Because they could end up in a very terrible situation here, because I've done some models myself for shits and giggles, and none of them turn out right if the person in the White House is not strong enough. And I'll end with this. Oh my God. Great example. Harris obviously isn't for Israel. She's made that clear. Her "I stand with Israel" doesn't count. Her actions, in other words, supersede that. Apparently, and this came across my phone like a week or two ago, Iran hacked the Trump campaign, took shit from the Trump campaign and gave it to the Biden campaign, and the Biden campaign had no comment. They didn't say they didn't take it. They didn't say they weren't approached by Iran. They didn't say they were approached by Iran and didn't take it. They had no comment. That one little instance says it all. If they had said Iran did and they did take it, obviously that causes a problem domestically 100%, but also causes a foreign issue. But if they said Iran never approached us, and they did, Iran is a country that tries to interpret Western civilization and is often wrong. Okay? Meaning, they'll try and interpret the meaning behind them denying that Iran ever came to them. Does that mean they're not going to support us anymore? Does that mean they're denying it because it's a domestic situation, because it's politically beneficial to them? They will go through this whole scenario in their own little fucking head. And usually they come out with a middle ground of, well, it's probably politically, expedient for them to say that, but we're still going to, punish them in one back way door or another, meaning the Biden administration, punish them somehow back door where nobody sees it nowadays, for doing that. Not fucking saying that we did take this information, we did give it to the campaign. How dare you say we didn't do it when we did it? Like, that's their personality trait. They're very narcissistic and crazy. So it's very strange how the Biden campaign was so concerned to have Iran interpret any interpretation that they had no comment for Iran to interpret. They just stayed silent. And if that's true, that reporting is true, and Iran did steal shit from the Trump campaign and give it to the Biden campaign, I mean, God, that says so much, because that is so little. That is such a little thing in the world of crazy that's going between the Biden presidency and Iran as it is. The communication there, direct lines of communication with their leaderships and their IRGC and God knows what else. I don't know what Iran has on the Democrats. I don't. Fucking Obama acted sketchy with them too. I don't get it. I don't know. The Democrats see the Middle East being evolved and revolve around Iran, not around Israel, not around Saudi Arabia, not around our allies. They see it revolve around Iran, and I don't understand why. I don't get it. This is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.